please join me in welcoming Esben to the stage.
Thank you. All right, thank you, everybody. It's a pleasure to see you all here. This little keynote is really just to set the stage for us for what this mission means and what the words that Finn talked about when we think about Seldon and for-profit AI safety truly can achieve and what we want to achieve. So I'm just going to go through the whole case, and I'm happy to discuss with you afterwards in the breaks as well what sort of arguments I come forth with here. But basically it's going to be about how can we make sure that for-profit AGI security becomes a massive field that truly has a large impact on AI safety and on humanity persisting beyond our current state. So with that said, I'll just jump into it. So first off, there's some premises here that we of course have to agree with. I'm curious to hear from everyone here who believes, and just like raise your hand, who believes that we'll have human level AGI in the next 10, 20 years, just any next time window? Yeah, that's quite a lot. That's nearly all of us. And so I think when you think of human level AI, you quickly think of also AI that can take the next leap beyond humanity as well. And of course, the first premise is to one degree or another, AGI is coming unless we do something about it. One part of that equation is really this research from Meter as well on whether agents are able to do long context tasks, which has usually been a human domain, whether AIs can do research development tasks within AI to improve themselves and so on and so forth, where we see that the state of the art is just that these two dots on the right, which is the long context window performance of Claude 3.5 old and new, it's not called old, but naming, is 4 months apart, while the only static data point here is the human one up at the top. And I know there's not colors, but human, AI is 4 months apart. And so that's the kind of world we are stepping into, where humanity isn't necessarily the ones who are going to be in charge. It's not necessarily the infrastructure we've built now that is going to be dominant. And then the second part of that is, of course, that AGI does bring catastrophic risks. I think many of you have heard the talks already by random folks such as godfathers of AI or whoever you've listened to on YouTube. And one example of this that goes beyond our AI safety bubble as well is this point that it's no longer the goal to automate information flows about us, but it's also the point that we actually want to automate the humans themselves, from Shoshana Zuboff and the Age of Surveillance Capitalism. And then, of course, on our side, we also have this research from the Center for AI Safety, looking at what are some of the catastrophic risks of malicious use for various things, such as pandemics, warfare, and so on and so forth. AI racing, like these dynamics, game theoretic dynamics between the big actors in the world, both companies and countries, that cause AI to be developed at a rapid pace. And then general organizational risks, which is something that we can deal with a lot within this for-profit domain too, and rogue AIs, which we should detect and monitor for. And then the third one is that everyone seems to agree that it is a big risk and it's a very, very transformational technology. So that's just what I would put into place here. Of course, this is from the statement on AI risk from 2023 that had a lot of signatures from everyone you know and love. So there's a few different things we can do about it. I want to highlight 3 here. But one of them is we can build aligned AGI. From my perspective, this is to one degree or another doing a Hail Mary with humanity on the line, and I'm not a massive fan of it. I do get the points, but it's not really a thing that brings a lot of hope. It's a little bit defeatist to my eyes. And there's a few actors that are focusing all their efforts on that, and you can earn a lot of money on it, so that's very valuable. But the per dollar safety isn't necessarily a linear correlation. The other thing you can do is you can govern, advocate, and reflect. So we can think about what are the next steps we want to take, use that to advocate for new governance, and we can possibly pause, we can possibly stop. And this is something where everyone needs to know what is going on in the world right now. Everyone needs to know the core arguments for why is this a big risk, why is this a potentially world-altering technology. And of course, this is true. And this is something that seems like people have seen it as a very non-intuitive thing. But it's quite intuitive. There's been hundreds of years of sci-fi talking about golems originally, and now robots displacing humanity in one way or another. So I don't think that it's something that takes a long time to understand. It just takes a long time to understand what are the implications of it and not take wrong actions for it. Now, the third part is what we are going to talk a lot about in this field of for-profit AGI security and AI safety. Specifically, we are going to talk about proactively building this new world where we can be secure with AI, either as tool AI or as general autonomous systems preferably the tool AI world. And there's one analogy that I like quite a lot that Stuart Russell sometimes uses, which is that right now we figured out how intelligence works and we are building a bigger bird instead of building an airplane that is safe and secure and has all these monitoring mechanisms to ensure that they work. And so we need a bunch of airplane safety-like mechanisms for AI safety as well. Some of those look like verifiable compute monitoring. It looks like real-world testing, not just sandbox domain evaluation. And it looks like cybersecurity both around superintelligence but also to defend against it. All these resilience mechanisms, these many different categories of technologies, I could go for a while, but in short, read about it online, you know? You might ask, who's doing stuff here? And here's a few people doing stuff here. Some of them more or less towards our domain of AI safety. These are very specifically companies that have been highlighted in the AI Assurance Technology Market Report. And these are all companies that are working on something related to this field of AI security, AI safety, assurance, auditing, so forth. And so I just want to highlight here that there is a field, and it is growing, and it is going to be massive. Proactively building this world is, of course, also a question of making sure that we shouldn't build it to sort of replace humans, but build it to augment and develop our civilization as a whole and who we are as a people. And part of that is, of course, that we can, with tool AI, we can develop Nobel Prize-winning innovations that can solve cancer, solve protein folding, and so on, while AGI and these generally autonomous systems can actually displace us. So there's a lot of questions of what does the future look like where we can be secure, but many of them are some that we can solve very specific verticals of with for-profit AI safety. Now, some of you might know me as well as one of the founders of Apart Research. This was originally founded a few years ago, and I just want to give that perspective. I was previously in multiple startups, and part of that question in the beginning was, can we do for-profit at that stage? It wasn't possible then because the incentives were actually misaligned. So for every dollar you earned, you wouldn't make a safer world. And that's something we've seen with some of the frontier model companies as well, where you are earning money on the AI becoming more capable, and so you enter into a capitalist-based race. Now, at that time, there wasn't really a lot of this for-profit AGI security, but we tried to explore it and tried to develop it. And this is some of the stuff that me and Finn have worked on as well at Apart that has developed into Seldon. But basically, the point that capital is the thing that is shaping the world. While a lot of research can develop technology as ideas, it's not necessarily the place to implement them. It's not necessarily the ones to deploy them. And we've seen across cybersecurity companies as well that it's actually beneficial to have a company dedicated to this specific security solution, because otherwise security and safety and all these questions we're talking about here will be delegated to a sub-department, which is, yeah, we are very focused on this safety, security topic or something like this, but it still isn't the core motive of their business. Now, what we've run there has been hackathons, and we've done it with Entrepreneur First as well. And some of you might know the DEFAC cohort that Entrepreneur First ran, which was a big pioneering move as well on getting entrepreneurs into this space. They did a lot of different things, and a couple of the folks we've worked with have also come from there, and we are very grateful for those collaborations. And then we also wrote on this topic of for-profit AI safety. Like, how can we develop very scalable, sustainable organizations that solve very specific problems that we need for this new type of society? And there's a lot online about it, so if you search, you'll probably find some of these writings. Now, what is the purpose here of Seldon Lab? The purpose is that we should prove that it's possible to develop this field of for-profit AGI security, this field of solving the big problems through these hyperscaling companies. While we are seeing very, very short timelines on AGI, this is a question where can we scale companies fast enough to solve these specific technical problems that are blocking governance, that are blocking enterprise, that are blocking insurance, that are blocking even the benefits of AI. So this is not a case where we are trying to avoid the benefits, but we are trying to actually enable them through a foundation of security. And then show that it's, of course, the most exciting mission you can do today. I think that's extremely important to mention, because I think if you build AGI, it's sort of giving up to the scaling curves themselves. While if you build here, it's a case where you can shape the future of how we interact with technology and with each other in democratic societies and so on and so forth, because we have to rethink what it looks like in the face of this new industrial revolution of AGI. And so part of that is bringing this new world forward as quickly as possible. We've run the pilot batch now with Seldon, and that's been an acceleration of these companies and try to understand what can we really do to push these technologies fast forward. and you'll hear more about them later. But part of why we want to show it's possible is that some people underestimate the benefits and the type of market cap and the revenue that safety can actually garner, especially at this inflection point we've had in the last year, I think. And one very pertinent example is that, and I'll just focus on maybe finance here, but in finance, in Wall Street and so on and so forth, 25% of the money spent is spent on assurance, financial assurance. These are products that ensure that you minimize your risk. And so this pattern isn't isolated to that, even though you may think so. So in cloud security, the exact numbers are unknown and you can estimate them, but it's also around 16 to 22% of the cloud compute market that is dominated by cybersecurity companies. And so this is a case where we are just seeing that if we expect AGI to be such a big force for the world, we also expect AI safety and assurance to be a massive industry down the line. Now, some other reasons, and we'll hear about it a bit later too, that this is a highly promising field is that we've seen very, very fast growth of AI safety-focused companies like Goodfire. So that's grown within a year from 25 million valuation to 250 million valuation, which is obviously a lot of money and a lot of growth. We've also seen that the previous generation of this security industry that was started in the 2010s, we've seen very, very big exits that I think will drive the markets to realize that this is a massive opportunity. Like I usually say, if you invest in this market of AI safety now, then you're going to be rich in the future because it's the most world-changing industry. And some of you may be like, just want to make sure it's safe. But this is how we can drive a lot of push and impact through this field as well. And then, of course, I'm sure you are aware, but there's a lot of talks in governments too about the governance of these technologies, of export controls, and so on and so forth, where it's not just that governments will require compliance and will have some regulations, some EU AI Act, and you tick the boxes, even though this is going to be a massive industry like many other compliance industries. But it's also that governance actually requires these new technologies. If governance doesn't have them, then we do not know what the red button does once it's necessary to click on it. This is a case where we, as an industry and as a field, can develop that much farther than it is today. We're sort of entering this industrial revolution. There's powerful AI as the standard, either tool or general. And attacks become the default. We are looking at a world where it's not going to be the easiest to avoid any of these, like spam agents is the first steps that I'm sure you and all of your families have experienced. We also see that the attack surfaces expand radically and that we need this new foundation of security. And of course, you might ask, have there been prior examples of this? And I'm sure some of you would argue for the nuclear treaties that have been enforced by seismographic reading analysis tools that became available. And some of you may not know about that, but I'll highlight two different stories here of technology enabling this revolution. In the 80s, encryption had been developed, but the government was close to banning it. But then because the financial institutes were like, actually, we want our transactions to be safe, they pushed for the government to not ban it. And now encryption is, of course, the general purpose technology we use to surf the web. And while we are at the pre-80s stage of the internet in terms of AI, where they were just like, oh, but we have 20 servers on our local network, so we don't need this encryption thing. But to make it useful at all, you need all this security infrastructure that now exists at 7 different layers on the internet and provides you with all the interaction tools you use today. And this is a case where the markets pushed for this security technology to be implemented because it was safe. And I think we'll see similar things in AI. Another one is this adoption question, where I'm sure some of you have interacted with the climate space in some degree or other. I sure have, and I know some others have too. And there was a big question of, can we drive adoption fast enough? Can we use government to push for all these much greener technologies, such as for energy infrastructure? And I think a very pertinent example where technological development just happened in solar. And so China adopted 1 million solar panels every day because this is a technology that works, and not because it is necessarily a more climate-friendly solution, but because it is the only option if you want such a scale. Now, some of that is also why it's the most exciting. Of course, I want to hand it over to some of the founders to show why it's exciting instead of me talking about it, because screw that, right? What matters is that demos happen and that technology is deployed, not that someone writes another blog post about this. So a couple of statements before that. I want to say, of course, AI safety implies like world-altering ambition. We don't have the time to like sit around and not think of extreme scale. And that's exciting to me, also a little bit scary, but that's sort of what makes this fun, right? And I also think that this room is in a unique position to shape that future of our socio-technical infrastructure, right? as some of the surveillance capitalism stuff has said, as some of the new governance mechanisms in Taiwan and so on have developed in the face of digital revolutions, we are at a stage where we can be a part of developing it proactively and think what sort of future do we want to move towards instead of being reactive to what happens in the world. And then I also think that now has been the time, and this is why we've started it as well, now is the time that profit can actually align with safety, because suddenly you're seeing a lot of risk be represented on your bottom line as a company and as a government. And so that's the short spiel. Of course, let's hear from the front lines instead, and I will invite Christian to the stage to give the first demo.